Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to break down something called DBT, which stands for Data Build Tool. And look, if you work with data in any capacity, this is a tool you absolutely need to know about. It has, and I'm not exaggerating, completely changed how modern data teams get their work done.
But first, let me ask you something. Does this look familiar? You've got all this great data, but getting from that raw stuff to a clean, useful report feels like navigating a giant bowl of spaghetti. It's just a tangled mess of scripts, and everyone's honestly a little scared to touch anything. If you're nodding your head right now, trust me, you are not alone. This exact chaos is the problem DBT was built to solve.
So let's actually zoom in on that mess for a second. What does it really look like? What are the specific headaches that cause this kind of data chaos? Well, before tools like DBT came along, the analytics world often felt a lot like this. You had these incredibly fragile SQL scripts that felt like they'd break if you just breathed on them wrong. You had no real way to automatically test if your data was even correct. Documentation? Yeah, that was usually an afterthought, if it happened at all. And trying to figure out where a number came from, its data lineage, was a total nightmare. All of this created this constant low-grade fear that changing one tiny thing might blow up 10 different reports downstream. This kind of environment just kills productivity. It makes development painfully slow and, even worse, it erodes any trust you might have in the data itself. But thankfully, there is a much better way to build with data.
And you guessed it, that better way is DBT. So let's get into our next section here and really unpack this new approach.
So what is it, really? At its heart, DBT is a tool for transforming data that's already sitting inside your data warehouse. Now, this is a key point. It doesn't extract data, it doesn't load data. You know that popular ELT acronym, extract, load, transform? DBT focuses only on that T for transform. Its whole job is to take raw, messy data and turn it into clean, reliable, analysis-ready tables. And this right here, this is the magic. This is the big idea. DBT takes all the battle-tested best practices from software development, things like version control with Git, writing modular code, running automated tests, creating documentation, and it applies them directly to the world of SQL. It lets you treat your analytics code like the serious professional software project it actually is. Okay, so how does it actually do all that? Let's pop the hood and take a look at the anatomy of a DBT project. We'll break down the core building blocks.
So first up, we have models. And don't let that name scare you. It's not as complicated as it sounds. A DBT model is really just a single SQL file. And inside that file is a single select statement. That's it. Just think of each model as one small, logical step in your data transformation, like one recipe for creating one clean, useful table.
Now, this is where it gets incredibly powerful. Look at that little ref function. Instead of typing out a table name like you normally would, you refer to another model. This is huge because you're not hard-coding anything. You're creating a dynamic link, a dependency. DBT uses this amazing templating engine called Jinja to see all these refs, and it automatically figures out how all your models connect to each other. All right, next up, tests. With DBT, making sure your data is high quality isn't some extra step you do at the end. It's a core part of the workflow. You can make simple assertions about your data, like, hey, is this ID column always unique? Or this column should never be empty. This builds a crucial safety net around your data so you can actually trust the numbers you're reporting. And what's so brilliant is how simple it is. You don't have to write some crazy, complex testing code. A lot of the time, it's just a couple of lines of configuration in a simple text file. This lets you add a really powerful data quality check right there with your model. It's fantastic. And finally, let's talk about materializations. It's a fancy word, but the concept is pretty straightforward. It's just a setting that tells DBT how it should build your model in the database. Should it create a permanent table that actually stores all the data? Or should it just be a simple view, which is basically just a saved query? So the two most common choices are view and table. A view is great because it's always fresh, it reruns the query every single time. But it can be slow if the logic is really complex. A table, on the other hand, stores the results, so it's way faster for people to query, but it takes up storage space. The amazing thing about DBT is you can switch between these with just one line of code, which lets you easily tune the performance of your project. Okay, so we've got models, tests, and materializations. These are our building blocks. But how do they all come together in a real day-to-day workflow? Let's take a look.
The beauty of DBT is how simple and elegant this is. Your core workflow really just comes down to a few super powerful commands. First, you type dbt run. That tells dbt to build all of your models, and it does it in the perfect order. Then you type dbt test to run all those quality checks you defined. And finally, dbt docs generate, which, get this, creates a complete interactive documentation website for your entire project.
So, you might be wondering, how does DBT Run know the right order? Well, it builds something called a DAG, a directed acyclic graph. Now, let's just break that down. It's directed because data flows in one direction, from your raw sources out to your final reports. And it's acyclic because you can't have loops. Model A can't depend on Model B if Model B already depends on Model A. This DAG is basically the brain of your entire project, and it allows DBT to orchestrate everything perfectly. So, we've seen the pieces, we've seen the workflow. Let's pull back for a second and answer the big question. Why is this such a massive game changer for data teams?
Well, it all comes back to fixing those pain points we talked about at the very beginning. Your data becomes more reliable because tests catch issues before they ever get to a dashboard. Collaboration gets way better because everything lives in Git, so you can do code reviews. Governance actually becomes possible because your documentation is centralized. And that tangled mess of data lineage, the DAG makes it crystal clear and easy to follow.
So, we'll leave you with this final thought. We all like to say that data is one of our company's most valuable assets. And if that's really true, then isn't it time we started building and maintaining that asset with the same rigor and professionalism we apply to our most critical software? That's the powerful shift in thinking that DBT brings to the table.